at the time. So even his openness about it when questioned, I think in the deposition, became uh, just of contention, and I think a little bit of transparency in the I think the public seemed a bit as to how open is about it, like how straightforward he was about it. And it seems as if the most recent response is conviction being overturned is based around the fact that, you know, he's an admitted accuser. So he's an admitted accuser, and, you know, the justice system is clearly broken. The thing that, which, you know, two things can be true at the same time, right?
Can they?
Well, I think so. I think
That's called mutual.
our
That's called
brains,
not mutually exclusive for you intellectual.
right? I think our brains can hold two concepts simultaneously, right? Uh, you know, that the justice system is a not justice system for Black people. You know, when you look at the justice system, Black lens, there is, well, frankly, through any lens. Let me just be clear about that. Not just from a Black perspective, but when examining the disparities and outcomes of judgments and outcomes of imprisonment and outcomes of holding folks in simply because they can't afford bail, because they can't afford a lawyer to push forth a fair and speedy trial. The When you look at those outcomes, the folks that sit in the highest numbers are Black people. So, color, uh, when you look at those outcomes, obvious a sweeping disparity when it comes to our judiciary. So, with that being said, the other that, you know, he can be a self-admitted perpetrator. Um, the I guess the thing that I'm surprised about is the fact that not just the Felicia Ratan, um, one, how often and like how often do we see any type of reversal for a Black man of any socioeconomic standing facing these type of charges, getting this type of result, and in this type of time? So the stood out to me was it became less about a racialized divide and divide. Most of the critiques for Bill Cosby immediately went to, well, here's men of power, here's how money clearly works for people. It was almost as if, you know, Bill was no longer Black. He was no longer a Black. He was now a wealthy, like, you know what I mean? Like, his no longer is the judicial uh, this this imbalance when it comes to Black people. It's now an imbalance when it comes to uh, you know, the and they're broken. So I thought that was the at least the most interesting. The about it, and the fact that it seemed people weren't picking up on that. That all of a sudden, um, that all of a sudden justice doesn't work. Like, it almost negates the cries of like Black Lives. not the national organization, but the folks on the actual ground doing work, the local chapters and the grassroots organizations that, and even the Innocence Project focuses that sheds a light on the things that I just, in the racial disparities when it comes to judicial outcomes. It's almost as if that just went away. And you know, his wealth and his access supersede his race, like the outcome black. And like that's a dangerous line to tread. We're saying, like, in other words, it gives the impression, so we can buy, it's almost like saying you can buy your way out of slavery. Like, okay, so I can buy my freedom then. Like, if you have enough money, then a race analysis is no longer valid. Is valid. You can buy blackness. You can buy your way out, and as if where blackness simply becomes synonymous with poverty. You know what I mean? Like all the outcomes, and the only way that your blackness is validated align. Like if he was a poor black person that had this outcome, then what would like where would your critique go if he was a black man? And then male, obviously, like, oh, this is why a couple of quickly took the position of this is why accusers wait before coming out in the open about sexual assault, things in the past, etc. I do room for that may be true. How many black men have been, like, irrespective of socioeconomic standing, how many black men in the visible public have been of rape, convicted for assault, and then had their judgment overturned? I'll wait. In other words, to pin this outcome on, oh, this is why women don't say anything because of these outcomes. Like, how often does this happen? That this is the you know what I mean? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. That would be the reason why women, because this is a very atypical. It's the same reason why people still get pissed off at OJ. OJ 30 years later about golf, and every single tweet this man tweets, it's 1,000 comments.
Right, I saw
about
him being
where's your wife? Where
that's not a good. I don't think it's a good example because I know for a fact OJ killed his wife.
Oh, you know for a fact. Listen.
I know for a fact. Remember when the Asian forensic expert testified, Dr. Lee testified and said that there were two sets of footprints, so it could have been two killers. Remember he said that?
I do recall.
Okay, when he said that, I'm a lip reader. When he said that, OJ looked at Johnny Cocker and said, "That's strange. I didn't see anybody else." So,
man, I can't even take you seriously,
but as far as it is, this may not be atypical in that you can make the case that Bill Cosby was actually railroaded because he had an agreement with somebody that was signed and was not admissible in court, and the judge said we're going to admit it because we need to make sure the truth emerges. Now, would she have done that if Bill Cosby hadn't been so rich and famous? If he was just a regular person, would she have done that? And secondly, if this isn't superseding race, if he wasn't such a powerful man, would all those women have been in a room alone with Bill Cosby? I get the strange feeling he didn't necessarily have a winning personality. I don't think all that, because I try to get women along with me, and I'm a very personable guy. I'm the nicest guy you ever want to meet, and they don't go with me anywhere, nowhere. But they're always around him alone. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of them came from, and they were attracted to his fame. They all knew who he was because he's one of the first black people on network television. A lot of these back in the 70s and 60s, whenever this time took place, they know exactly who Bill Cosby was. So is it because of his power that he was able to get so close to all these women who may have desired careers in entertainment, or maybe I wouldn't say sort of relationship with him, but maybe try to make a connection with him from a business standpoint. But I don't know. But
sure.
at the end of the day, his this information was not supposed to be admissible in court, and judge admitted it. That's why he's free, because legally looks like the rule of law took over. It had nothing to do with necessarily maybe being rich and famous. If he wasn't so rich and famous, maybe the judge would not have admitted it in court to begin with. He's such a public figure. He's such a public figure.
No, all of those are really great points. Each one almost be a topic unto itself, because everything from what was the judge's motivation to break from kind of court procedure. In this specific case, has that judge exemplified a previous behavior of decisions? Like, was this a typical decision for that judge in that courtroom? All the way to the of, like you stated, would, like, let's say, for example, typical decision for that judge. Then to question, what is the motivation? But then equally, would that motivation be because the judge was being influenced by media, by political pressure, to make kind of an example, so to speak. But then would Cosby have faced such a decision if he was not as rich and famous? Would he, I think we can pretty confidently say that if he wasn't rich enough to afford an appeal, appeals are not, even the initial trial is not by so many poor people, irrespective of color, sit in a prison cell or sit in a jail cell right now because they can't afford a lawyer, they can't afford bail, they can't that they've received, even in paying restitution if it's something that they've admitted. Many folks, especially young black men, take a plea from a pressuring prosecutor simply because they feel they can't afford to go to trial. The odds are actually in their favor, even if they have a 96% chance of winning, and they are looking at legal costs, etc. So there's a direct line between outcomes, system, and monetary resources at the end of the day. So I think each of those are really good points that, like I said, it could be be almost a show in and of it, even including the part of what was the motivation for some of the victims. To our knowledge, at least that I recall being underage. Each accuser, an adult, at least by the state's definition of an adult. So you had some agents that you can, about the decisions you were making, the position you were putting yourself in, In some cases, maybe being forced in, whether it was a feeling of career would be at risk if you didn't do the things that you were being asked to do. You know what I mean? Like so many things is equally the thing that I often think about, because that particular argument about the accusers is, it's not a new argument, but the thing that often comes to mind was accusers. Even unfortunately passed. I think 05 when Mike. Just recently he's being exonerated some way, because the most recent accuser that got an HBO deal, sat exclusively with Oprah, got book deal, made money off of tarnishing Mike's name, and the judge threw it out because it lacked evidence. The thing that comes to mind for me is not the children when you think back to some of the original accusations, but what is the parent's motivation? Like, as a parent, I can't imagine leaving my child over anybody's house,
right?
Especially house. I don't care how much money they have. I don't care that you sing dance on anyone's stage. What is the motivation for leaving your child in someone's that you don't know? And then what used to boggle my mind is the subsequent parents after the first accusations came out.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, whether they were true or not true, that's not even the point. The fact that there were accusations and then you still leave your child.
Right.
It's like,
that's sort of that's wish defense, right? When he was defending Mike Tyson, he said everybody knows Mike's reputation. Why would anybody go to his hotel room alone? That was his defense of Mike Tyson. Everybody knows he's an animal, so.
Anyway, and Mike was just sitting there too, like,
right. And Alan Dershowitz didn't stop the defense. You think Mr. Anna come back maybe one day and say, Anna, could you strike that from the record? I may have had a momentary fit of insanity. I misspoke. I had the wrong notes. I read the script from a horror movie or something. But as far as but a lot of what you said, a lot of people debating that online about Bill Cosby. And as far as the blue checks, it seems like black people tend to decide who they like and don't like before they decide who they're going to defend. So apparently somebody decided they didn't like Bill Cosby and years ago, and now he's open season, and a lot of people had to eat a lot of crow now. Barris and a lot of people who had talk shows burying Bill Cosby. So a lot of people have to eat a lot of crow. But as far about Bill Cosby, I do a stand-up show and just go in on Hannibal Barris about how his career has, how that his accusations have aged on Bill Cosby. I would just go out to people who buried him. But anyway, so we can put the free Bill Cosby t-shirts away now. He's back home. I want to talk about Endo briefly, just while I have you. I think it's important. We get this out of the way. That you saw the analysis I sent you, and just for the audience, for the viewers, Endo is a generics, primarily pharmaceutical company. It also has some branded drugs like Vasostrict that's doing pretty well. It also has a cellulite treatment that's coming out. It's supposed to be anticipated to be a blockbuster drug, but it has some exposure to opiate litigation, and the stock is trading around below $5 a share, which is in my mind criminal. It's been trading below $5 a share for like 3-4 years now, all because of some opiate overhang. But the actual statistics say something different. That people are very bullish on Endo. Institutions control about 84% of the stock, and they don't sell, and another 1 to 2%. So what I call insiders, institutions and insiders control about 85% of the stock, and they're waiting for it to double, to triple, or quadruple. after this opiate litigation goes away. But you have about people who control about 15% of the stock that are manipulating stock, and the stock's been trading sideways. You have day traders who buy and sell it each day for 15, 20 cents a day. Maybe you can make a lot of money on that on the huge volume, but you have people who control 50% of the shares who control the stock, and the 85% who are bullish really don't trade it. So it's very thinly traded when you think of the fact that they have like 233 million shares outstanding, 194 million float. But what I looked at is that they have about 23 million shares sold short of the float that's not held by insiders. That's about almost 70%. What I call effective short interest. That compares to 34% for GameStop and 38% for AMC theaters. And we know Wall Street bets and a lot of people have invested in GameStop and AMC and made these stocks pop and create short squeezes where they become known as meme stocks. So I think once the investment community becomes more aware of Indo, that it's a company with 1.4 billion in cash, 1.2 billion EBITDA. I think it's worth over 20 now. I think Quo standalone is probably worth over $30 per share standalone. So I'll get your take on just the what you think about it's the analysis that sent over as far as looks like it's very highly shorted.
Yeah, honestly, when you brought it to my attention, I was shocked because the last time, trading under $5 over the last 3 years, with a few time periods where it's popped above the $6 mark. I think like this time last year, it peaked at a little over 10. Looked like it was starting to find some justice in terms of price. Only to be depressed back down to where it is now, which is at this point below $4. And I think what's primarily driving the most recent price action is the judgment out of Tennessee, some of the opioids. But in terms of the short interest, I probably periodically look at it. It's been pretty consistent. Most stocks, we usually have a short interest under 5%, which I think most analysts would agree, and certainly most traders would agree that that's a pretty standard short interest ratio. Is nothing that would garner in terms of looking at a potential short squeeze. First brought it to my attention that it had essentially doubled, like actually more than doubled. I was like, holy crap. Like, what's going on? So yeah, when you put it or just frame it in comparing it to GME and AMC, then this one an absolute no-brainer, because even with the institutional comparison between AMC, even with the most recent investment that AMC received after their first pop, institutional capital, it still didn't reach levels that Indo is at now, at 85, at 84% of institutional holders. And institutions don't try to hold a loss, have enough capital to hold on to a stock for years at a time, because they ultimately know that at some point recognize its true value, this thing is going to pop. And for 84% of institutions this, to me, that all speaks to the viability of Indo as a company when you compare it both and AMC were at. I mean, frankly, we can kind of look at AMC and GameStop as really a patriotic rescue mission. Retail has been doing poorly, like brick and mortar retail has been doing poorly the last few years. We watch big flagship stores. Really, Sears and Kmart kind of led the connect the minds, so to speak, because over the last decade, Sears and Kmart have been dealing with bankruptcies, staving off bankruptcies, shutting down stores. But we were still largely looking at those in a bit of tunnel vision. Like, these are just kind of one-offs. But when you look at how retail has drastically declined over that same period, they really were the canary. Kohl's, J.C. Penney's, Lord and Taylor, Macy's, like the list goes on and on and on about how brick and mortar has been going to death over this time period. GameStop and AMC are, not unique, in other words, to the brick and mortar experience. I think the only thing that, typically saved GameStop from suffering, Lord and Taylor, for example, is the fact that you can still in GameStop, but going into a video game store, playing a video game is largely change of mobile devices and more at home. So in other words, when we compare with and AMC would have eventually headed, in my opinion, if it were not for the intervention of bets, and you look at, we're talking like this is two conversations. In other words, like Endo was not on the verge of bankruptcy due to selling a product that has been in line. In other words, Endo, in fact, of the mid-market biopharmas, which one is a testament because there aren't many left. Even when you compare 5-6 years ago, where biopharmas almost could do no wrong. AbbVie, Gilead Sciences, really from 2014, you can just kind of throw a dart, hit any biopharma, and the thing was set to pop, in a 6-month time period. So, when you look back from that time, Endo has really stood the test, because some of those same companies that are around are literally trading sub-penny pieces. Meanwhile, Endo, the only one left that has that a pipeline of drugs, even if you remove some of their more popular drugs, and you just look where I think what their generics made up about 30% or a third of their revenue. If you remove generics, they still have a strong pipeline. And then you have Quo, which in my opinion is going to be bigger than Botox, simply because Botox at this point is purely aesthetic. Quo is addressing something that every woman suffers, every woman suffers from, and even men suffer from, which is cellulite. They're bringing out a cell. So in other words, when we compare an Endo, GameStop, and an AMC, these are not comparable. And for AMC, AMC is trading, I think it went as high as just under 80. Right now it's trading 80s. And I think most folks are familiar with GameStop media. Came all the way back down to the 40s after going nearly 500, and is back up in the mid 200s. Meanwhile, you have a company that that is possibly sitting on a drug or a treatment that may be the most popular treatment that we will see in the next decade easily, and it's below $4 a share or below $5 a share at this point. Hey, it makes no sense. when you brought the short to my attention, I'm just like, yeah, this is this is it is mind blowing that that the few shares, because like you said, it's thinly traded. Is in I think between the 2 and 3 million mark as a volume traded. So this is a pretty thin stock already, and then clearly aggressively trying to short the what, less than 15% left, the less than 15% shares that are left traded. You're trying to short these shares. So yeah,
that's called greed, right? It's called greed, right?
That's absolute greed. I'm like, maybe they're maybe some folks are licking their wounds from the AMC and GameStop and trying to look to Endo to make up money. I don't know.
It's been working. It's been working for them. So,
certainly the last couple of days.
I'm talking about for the past few years. For the past few years, it's been working for them. These day traders and these short sellers. But now we have a better handle what the OP exposure is for this company, and we have. And while institutions have been quiet about it because they know the opportunity, so it's been quietly buying up cheap shares. But we haven't really, and we haven't really been that loud about it. So when you know something, nobody's gonna have a bigger conviction than people who own the stock. So I started putting a couple, put some information out on my website and put some information out on social media about it. So we'll see if it gains some traction. But I'm not suggesting that Wall Street Bets or Reddit Army take capital off the table away from GameStop or AMC. I'm just saying, in addition to short opportunities, opportunities to buy GameStop and AMC. Endo is another opportunity where you can buy a stock that's a real company has fundamental value that's trading multiples below where it should be trading, and it's a market anomaly, an opportunity to take advantage of a market anomaly. Not these 23 million short sellers would do if people rushed into the stock time finding shares to buy, because again the institutions and the insiders aren't selling, so they have to buy back the remaining float that's maybe only held by 15%. The 15% that's not held by insiders. I think they'll be hard pressed to find shares to buy back. But this looks like kindling in the making, these short sellers, if people rush into the stock. And I saw some movement today in the stock in terms of trading volume, the open this morning. So I think it's getting some activity. So once if the people watch this podcast, I think people will be more aware of the opportunity. That's all we can do. We can't make anybody do anything. All we can do is to talk about it and make people aware of the opportunity without being a distraction or yelling and screaming. But again, I don't want people to take money away from Apple, from GameStop, or from AMC. It's just this is another opportunity people may not be aware of. So thanks for that. But on to BlackRock. So we found out from Zero Hedge that BlackRock may have been trading some stock just back and forth with the Fed Chairman Jerome Powell. And just so some background on BlackRock. They manage about 8 to 9 trillion assets under management, the biggest asset manager in the country. I think they have about two managers.
I think on the globe, right?
I think in the globe. They manage about 2 trillion ATFs, and they're known for passive investing. And they right up there with states, but they're bigger than them. And so you're talking about $8 trillion in assets under management. And they have, I think they were managing some assets under the Obama administration when Obama was in office. They may have been doing some things for the government. They probably made a mint working with the government under the Obama administration. So I'll read this email from BlackRock, from a high-ranking official from BlackRock, and to Jerome Powell. Hi, Jay, on a first-name basis. I wanted to forward this analysis by our capital markets team of ETP trading performance last week. Hope it's helpful to you and your team. All the best. So it just seems like this person is basically letting Jerome Powell know how ETFs, the performance of their ETFs. Buying ETFs, I know they have contemplated it. I know that they provided a tremendous amount of stimulus during the pandemic, more than we've ever seen, when they actually started providing capital to the credit markets to make sure credit kept flowing to the companies. And some of these companies, like General Electric, were cash strapped. They were borrowing at rates lower than what they could borrow before the pandemic, and they were extending debt out on terms that were more favorable than they could have gotten prior to the pandemic. So there were a lot of cash strapped companies that may have benefited from the pandemic because they would be able to borrow money cheaper and on maybe more favorable terms. I know the Fed have been talking about buying ETFs to help spur the economy. I don't know how that's helping the economy. I know how it would help BlackRock, State Street, and Fidelity. See how much $8 trillion you're gonna put money into ETFs. How's that benefiting anybody? It's help the people who control the assets. And I've been saying that for years. And there was also rumors that even prior to the pandemic, that people within the Trump administration had met with hedge fund managers and told them about COVID-19 and the possibility of shutting down the economy. And some of those hedge fund managers were able to dump assets weeks before the rest of the public found out about the pandemic. That's why the stock market was falling before we even knew there was a pandemic. And hedge fund managers were able to get out because they had I call it strong information. I wouldn't call it inside information. I would call it strong information. There's public information. There's strong information where you can get from just doing research, going through financial statements, and maybe being close to a certain sector. Then there's inside information, which is illegal. So this seemed like an example of maybe some strong information where you actually have access to Jerome Powell, who runs the Fed, and maybe have an idea of assets he could be buying, or when he's going to stop buying certain assets, and you have a chance to make moves before the rest of the before the public does. Is that how you see
it? Well, put on my Christmas list after reading that Zero Hedge exposed is I would like to know the weather before the weather changes. I would like to know the lottery numbers before they come out. I would love to know which stocks are going to hit, and especially at what time of day they're going to hit before they hit.
Funny. Can you repeat that? Torian,
so,
can you repeat that one more time? I didn't write that down. The weather,
the lottery, and stocks. I will. Which of the like when the changes are happening before they happen.
Well, so, you already know what's going to happen with Indo. We already know that.
Exactly.
If it's halted tomorrow morning, if it doesn't open tomorrow morning, you won't be.
Right. I would love to, tomorrow, 11:30, trade session. That would be great. That's the way that I looked at the email. Is it would be lovely to be able to know what needs to be bought ahead of buying it. It's comical, but it's also not comical. At these things to keep from getting upset. It reminds me of after Michael Lewis wrote was that Moneyball or
Lies Poker? Lies Poker?
Say that again.
Was it Lies Poker or Moneyball?
Get which one where
the first one was Lies Poker.
Essentially accused the market of being also Michael of Scion Capital,
Big Short,
Scion Asset Management, right? Said the same. That we're in a rigged market, and I think anyone that has been in the extended period of time far-fetched a fetched statement.
Well, before you go on, Torian, before you go on, when I was in business school, I read I think it was either Den of Thieves or another book on Wall Street. It may have been Predator's Ball or something. And they were talking about how the market was rigged, how the regular public thought the market was rigged. I thought that was the dumbest thing ever. How could the public think something crazy like that? And then as you get older, you realize that the public was smarter. I've got B in economics, got my MBA, blah blah blah. Country, and then next thing you know, the public actually smarter than what you are.
Exactly.
It's rigged. It's rigged, kid. It's rigged.
It took you 20 years to come full circle, right?
Like, this is rigged. This ain't right.
That's exactly.
This ain't right. This ain't fair.
It's like, when you have the very folks, the very fund managers, portfolio managers, making to the government about what to buy in their weekly buy the government already has set up. I mean, what a life. What a life. I wish we could all be able to tap in to that type of crystal ball accuracy. Where's the risk? If I already know ahead, you call it buying ahead or selling ahead. If I know that there's a big institution, this is when it crosses a certain line, this is the difference between insider information. 2 days before an institution in a big sell order, and I sell or I buy with the intention that this thing is going to pop when they sell. Insider information, that's buying ahead and selling ahead. That's what that is. Just very plain and simple. Not even complex. But what a life to live, man. I would love that type of certainty where there's no risk. Anytime I put, I know it's going to increase with 100% certainty, because I know that somebody's on the other side of that trade is getting ready to buy a large block order. And I'm going to watch my price action just shoot up nicely. It's like, I would love that type of certainty. But where else does such certainty exist? And I think that's really the point. That was really the point to Zero Hedge exposing the email. If folks that are familiar with Zero Hedge, there's always an underlying cynicism within their articles and their and equally their tweets. But again, some folks would call it kind of the equivalent of almost the doom and gloom report, simply because it's hard not to be cynical when this isn't a rarity. Like this, and the fact that this is even mainstream news information.
Right. Nobody's shocked.
Right. Like no one's like, oh my God. Like, did you see what? Like, it's just like, yeah, okay. It's a Wednesday.
Right.
So, if you spent any time within the markets, like I said, this doesn't even raise an eyebrow. Because it has become the norm to see this type of game being played. And you're just kind of figuring out where you fit in that game. You just don't want to be the one holding the bag, so to speak. But hey, this is the game that. This is one of the reasons why we, saw it took nearly 2 years, in December, 6 months from now, COVID, as far as we know it, 2 years. We've been in a pandemic, beginning of January, February. We kind of consider November, December, where it was still, or so the consensus is, primarily within China. It was slowly spreading. But in a short period of time, it's almost 2 years that we would have been in a pandemic. And, folks are still fighting over a $2,000 stimulus check. To this day, not every person has gotten $1,000 stimulus check. Also math. Like, oh, you already got 600 under Trump. I'm gonna give you the other $2,000. Meanwhile, you have the government buying billions upon billions of dollars of ETF. Like, when did the government, the game portfolio management? You know what I mean? Pay your taxes. You're not paying. Like, in fact, that's one of the biggest and most open illegalities in the country, is the fact that taxes are structured in such a way that the mass majority of people expect a refund. The thing that people don't get is the fact that you've gotten a refund is the evidence that you have overpaid the government. Mm-hmm. IRS. Businesses don't pay the government up front. Businesses get a bill at the end. And that bill is typically an exact bill for how much taxes you owed over the past 12 months. We don't, if you are a W-2 employee, you pay every check. Well, when the government, like, let's say if your taxes that you've paid was $10 for the year, you get a refund of $2,000. Some folks, ooh, I got $2,000 refund. Awesome. But they didn't know that the taxes that they were supposed to pay was only $5,000. And you only got $2,000 of the $5,000 that you got back, and with no interest. So if you're in the game of portfolio management, where's the interest? Every time you pay taxes, you don't get, well, you overpaid us. Here's, we bought some bonds, we bought some ETFs, we sold some treasuries. Here, your refund plus 3%, plus 4%, just to keep up with the rate of inflation due to purchasing power decline. Because by the time I get that dollar next year, the purchasing power of that dollar has decreased. Inflation has not technically from the Fed, but I can only buy less with my dollar, because it doesn't matter that the Fed has, because milk has gone up, because cereal has gone up, because bread has gone up, peanut butter, gas, all of the basket of goods that you're required to put food on the table. Rents, average across the nation, have increased over 14%, with housing prices on average have gone up 24%. In states like New York and California, that increase is north of. So in other words, it doesn't matter that the Fed has not moved inflation, because in the actual economy where real people live, where you still gotta cut a mortgage check, pay your rent, put food on the table, or roof over your head, clothes on your back, the things that allow you to do that are constantly increasing even during a pandemic. And the government is not returning any of the money, even the stimulus check. The fact that folks have to ask the government for a stimulus check. It's like, well, first of all, the government isn't making, or really shouldn't be making, money outside of the tax revenue. This is the biggest source of government fund. So your stimulus check is just simply what? A return of your taxes. So if it's playing portfolio manager, where we're going to the biggest fund manager, and because we're going to start putting together a government portfolio, then who's reaping the benefits from that? In other words, when that ETF, percent pops 30%, how is that doled out? When do we see those returns? In other words, certainly not in the stimulus check, not in. So you know what I mean?
Like, when it benefit the ETF, when it benefit the ETF manager or the ETF holders, people who got money in ETFs.
Well, certainly, but how? What is the percentage of people that ETF, and then what is the return within that ETF compared to incentive through taxes or your stimulus check? Because if that's the case, then the conversation, then Trump gave you $600 and I'm going to give you $1,400. The math would have been Trump gave you $600. I'm going to give you $400 because you made $800 on the ETF last summer.
Well, let's say
in your 401k or your 403.
Right, but let's say I'm BlackRock or State Street or Fidelity. My ETFs keep rising. I get, as a portfolio manager, I get more fees. If I'm a hedge fund manager, I know the Fed is buying ETFs. I know I can go out and buy Moderna and Novavax. Forget about their.
You're gonna get me started on.
No, I'm just saying those stocks. We know stocks are going to keep rising, right?
Yeah, as long as the Fed keep buying.
Right, the Fed's buying, so I know I can keep buying stocks. It doesn't matter what I can crowd into a trade. It doesn't matter about earnings. The stock's gonna keep rising just on gravity and inertia. Yeah, I think Galileo said something about an object of motion tend to stay in motion.
Yep.
So the Dow's at 35,000. It's gonna stay in motion. The Fed keeps buying.
Hey, screw it. We might hit 40 by December.
Right, so that's why you have hedge fund managers crowd into trades, because they already know the Fed's providing not just providing a floor now, they're just basically, they are the market in a lot of ways.
Oh, 100%.
You know so you basically, it's a way for people in the market, hedge fund managers and people who manage ETFs to skim. It's like not necessarily a kickback, but definitely some type of pork to the people, to people who to the investment funds.
Oh, 100%.
Right?
But
and
also
that guy Rick, it's a guy named Rick Reeder who works for BlackRock. He's always on CNBC, talking about the market. And this guy's like Master Universe. Of course, you know what's going on with the market. You know what I'm saying? He talks with he speaks so definitively too. Yeah, of course he can speak definitively. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. When you got the Fed in your pocket and you're the one making the recommendations on what they should be buying when they buy ahead.
And there has been gamesmanship between the Fed and the markets that we've known about. I know Alan Greenspan used to say back in the late 80s, early 90s, he would say, I'm thinking about hiking rates, and then the next day, then the Dow would fall, and they get quotes from Wall Street saying the Fed's thinking about hiking interest rates. That's not a good idea. So he'd get feedback from the market. You know what I'm saying? The market would have, we don't like that idea. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So he wouldn't do it. Or if he said, I'm going to do this, and Dow goes up, oh, that's a good idea. And then you have guys on Wall Street praising the Fed. Oh, it's a good idea if he does that. So it's like a way of reading the tea leaves. And I'm sure they still do that with Bill Gross. With Bill Gross going on saying that that's a good idea. The Fed's doing this. But it's a bad idea. So they get feedback from whether that's a good idea or bad idea. I don't think the Fed actually sits down and says we're going to do this, and without wondering what the market what the town criers are going to say. And
No,
and
that's
we know that people like Rumi. We talked about Rumi Khan, who used to be like work at the investment bank, running around engaging in insider trading. Rajaratnam, who ran the Galleon funds. Anil Kumar, who worked at McKinsey, was trading information with Rajaratnam. So they have a little insider trading ring going on. And then when you hear about McKinsey is
yep.
giving opiate companies advice on how to maximize profits from opiates, they're basically price and death. Price and death
Right.
into your model, to your projections, and it's still profitable to still sell opiates. Even if you pay people for who die, it's still profitable. And people wonder, well, why would McKinsey do that? McKinsey's basically nothing but a vehicle for criminal activity. What's turning into?
Let's yeah, because you hit on a lot of points that at the end of the day it really does boil down to the fact that and I'm not sure when the market ever represented was a representation of the actual economy. I'm not sure. Maybe I don't know. Maybe sometime before the Great Depression. I don't know. Maybe in the 50s. But that the stock market has ever been a factual representation of the economy. And the reality is that obviously the few portfolio managers, hedge fund managers, holders of the ETFs are going to benefit. But when we see that almost 700,000 retail walked out, this is retail has been one of the largest hiring sectors over the last 3 years. When we talk about unemployment numbers and the decline, each president, touts that, even after 08, 09, President Obama touted unemployment historically low. Trump, unemployment historically low, even compared to we're doing great. But when you look at the actual quality of these jobs that folks are getting hired for, these are not jobs, or the majority of these jobs are not jobs that pay a living wage, not a minimum wage, or even like team, because at the end of the day, $15 an hour is below a living wage. So let's be very clear that a lot of these jobs are not living wage. So what does that mean for the average person? That they don't have the room to be able to contribute to a company 401k, even if that company offers, say, a 401k. So
but
ETFs that are being held are the majority of the assets are coming from pensions, what's known as ERISA-based programs, with a fancy way to say retirement funds. So defined contribution, defined benefit, 401ks, 403bs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is where the bulk of those assets are.
From people who used to make a living wage decades ago.
Exactly.
But let me ask you. Okay, so when Obama says rising tides lift all boats, we're gonna bail out this sector and that sector, we're gonna give us people money. Is the economy, the fact you have a bunch of people who don't have a living wage, are you surprised? Are you surprised by that? That we're trickling down jobs to serve the wealthy.
I think it's been proven that this is stupid. It's idiotic to even repeat sense, especially by who came in office long after theoretical idiocy was debunked. It really was the driving force behind Reaganomics. And frankly, Reaganomics didn't work. And Reaganomics was in play, 30 years? Obama stepped foot into office. So for him to, use that, and remember, even, Republicans love to use Reagan as their kind of their benchmark. If you listen back to a lot of Obama's speeches, he uses Reagan as well. Like Reagan is one of his favorite. And whether that was an attempt to bridge a political gap between, Republicans and Democrats, I get that. However, it still falls in line with the fact that and stupid crap about these trickle-down economics that doesn't work. Rising tide doesn't all boats.
But when Reagan says it, it's a trick bag. Black folks see it as a trick bag.
That's 100% what it is.
When Obama says it, it's like, that's a good idea.
Right. He absolutely got the pass. And the thing that a lot of folks didn't realize, even after the TARP funds, 08, 09, and Timothy Geithner got this deal together. They came out and said, the financial system was frankly too big to fail. So our solution is to make it bigger. Our solution is to consolidate even. Double down.
Let's keep propping it up.
Exactly. So you had all of this free flowing cash at the top. We watched, if you look at what's known as the lost decade, between essentially 2000 and 2010 as a result of the, the housing bubble that burst, as well as the financial crash of 08, 09, as well as it was pretty much a flat decade where all the returns kind of disappeared. You pretty much broke even. From the following decade, wow, just blows my mind that we're no longer in the decade after 2010. Like this is a separate decade now.
It's like an echo. It was like an echo chamber. Like one of those rides down in Disneyland or something that you kind of like how to get out of it.
Exactly.
Like you kind of just be tossed around, you distorted, and you kind of figure out, am I still on Orlando?
So pretty much from the decade of 2011, essentially 2010 to 2020, asset prices. We've been on the longest bull run in history. Right? Let me just sum it up to say, and we've been on the longest bull run in history. The reason we've been on the longest bull run in history is because this free-flowing cash, cheap money, flooding the market. However, we've seen the quality of jobs decline. The quality of spending decline while spending itself has increased. And this is one of the main differences, is that I'll never forget when the banks went back to report to the government that the amount of qualified buyers or borrowers had declined after the crash, which actually wasn't true. Do you know what actually happened?
What?
So they use a ratio to know that if you have the ability to have some leftover cash flow after you pay your bills, and I believe the actual ratio was either essentially between 1.15 and 1.25. Of course, for every dollar of bills you have, you should have 15 to 25 cents left over. So that means that if I go to the bank, and whether as a business loan or a personal loan, if I have 15 to 25 cents left over out of every dollar that I spend paying, my mortgage, my car notes, student loans, all of the necessities that have to get paid, then I qualify. That's actually one of the biggest qualifiers that banks use, that commercial banks use to know if a person or business has credit worthiness. Do you know after they cut the TARP funds, do you know what they did with that ratio?
What?
They increased the ratio from 1.25 to 1.45 respectively.
To make it harder for people to qualify.
100%. And now all you have to do is present and say, well, you know, we have all of this free flowing cash, but we have such a hard time finding qualified borrowers, people that have the credit worthiness. So
so isn't that similar to like, you know, when black people say we can get this law passed, we can get that law passed, but do you have the power to enforce it?
There you go.
So you're giving money to banks and you're doing all this stuff, but can you make banks? As far as back to your point about the living wage, right? You know, my uncle just talked to me a couple of days ago, asking me about the kids being paid money for college, the ball players, NCAA paying players. And I told him that I don't think the players have actually done the math. I mean, are you really going to make enough money where it really matters?
Right.
If they pay you $5,000 a semester, pre-tax, right? You stay 4 years. That's $40,000 over 4 years. What are you going to do with that $40,000 pre-tax over 4 years? I mean, what could you, if you got $10,000 a year pre-tax, what could you afford to live off that? I mean, so they haven't. Yeah. The actual money the NCAA is gonna make, is it really worth even bringing it up? You know, because even if you can sell your likeness, if you like if you're like not the top player on the team, if you don't start, let's say you're the third best player on the team, is anybody gonna buy your jersey? I mean, if you play for a middle of the road team in that conference, if you play in the ACC and you play for Clemson, does anybody outside of that campus care who you are? And nobody's ever watched you on national TV.
No, those are good points. I will say though that I do the ability for a player to at least negotiate their the outcome. You know, whether that, because to your point, you know, the NCAA money from, you know, even video game developers, you know, like such as NCAA, you know, College Game Day, all of these essentially college-based video games, ads, etc. I think the option is that start seeing some equal outcome. And I do think that I think your point challenges that that we won't see these equal type of outcomes simply because, one, the NCAA is a single negotiating hub, meaning that when those contracts are negotiated for those and, you know, millions and billions, it goes through a single entity. If you know, what is it? Well, there's only 100, I think 400 or 600 players that play professionally, and I think it's something like what, like 5,000 or so, 6,000 college players. So in other words, like to your point, the competitiveness certainly is going to change. Like the landscape, like we're going to see folks like a LeBron, for example. Imagine had LeBron been in college and was able to negotiate a franchise contract for, you know, like a franchise video game series. You know, like we would have seen probably one of the biggest deals. Whereas, you know, you have, you know, players that like the 53rd pick in the draft. It's like, how many folks remember the 53rd? Like, how many folks on, you know, the first 20?
Right. Yeah.
So in
Remember, most of
terms
those guys
of
don't go to NBA anyway. I'm thinking about the guys who. I mean, LeBron's gonna get paid anyway. LeBron's gonna get paid. I mean,
right, but
that
I'm
type of
just
guy.
giving
But the
comparison
guys that
in
don't make
terms
the
of
guys.
right, right, just the talent differences, like the
Right.
talent are stark, and I think that's really the point that's being made is that one, you're already a pool of folks who won't largely be able to rate any type of equal pay, just like actors don't get equal pay, just
Right. Right.
like ball players professionally do not get equal pay. There is no equal pay except for a league minimum, but the NCAA doesn't have any league minimum. So
Right.
there
Right.
isn't any basement or for even a college player to establish and say, well, at the very least, I'm going to get that 5K. At the very least, I'm going to get that 40K. Some of them might only negotiate $500. Some of them may 120 million, which I think in the next decade we're going to see that type of difference because now competitiveness that the college leagues, because one, now that money has trickled down, this has already been a way for people to get a leg up economically. The majority professional, certainly NBA, NFL, largely black players. That same makeup is in play, but it's probably damn near close to it. Okay. So I see an increase in competition because now that money is trickled down, and with the right agents, with the right people on on your team, and that's essentially managing that player. You typically don't get managed into the league, but now we're going to see management teams starting even earlier, pee-wee leagues, scouting these guys because you're going to get to a payday or a potential payday much sooner than having to wait until that player gets into the league. So we are going to see this wide gap. Who gets, the type of deals? But I do think that those type of where some players, like literally, are going to get those 10, 20, 50. You know what I mean? As more money trickles into sports, we'll see those type of deals. But I think the majority of these deals are going to be, maybe what you were saying, maybe 5K, you get a couple grand. But
so
for the person, the last thing I was just going to say really quickly is for the person that is coming, frankly, out of poverty, even at 40 grand, if you're graduating school with 40K in your pocket as opposed to owing 40K, because 86%, I think maybe even higher than that, but in terms of the of you failing and not making the NBA or the NFL, in other words, so the majority of these players are not going to be professional athletes. So the ability to leave college with cash in your pocket versus owing, because not even the scholarships that they give are full scholarships. Like if you think about a D3 player, that's what makes it 3, because they don't even get a full scholarships or stipends or grant, and you still owe at the end of that stipend or grant. So which you know what I'm talking about. So because we see that pretty commonly in college football. In other words, you can still leave as a college athlete and still have debt. So even a 40K 20K, 10K with the things we know it's a drop in the bucket. But somebody that's coming out of poverty and have an ability to leave with a little bit of cash in their pocket, it certainly is a better prospect than leaving with a bill that they now have to pay off. So, I think that's the other side of it.
Right. I think what you're saying is like, okay, the first case we heard about this was Ed O'Bannon. He played at UCLA, and he was saying that they were using his likeness in some of the video games. I think that may be a little different. Same like what NCAA is really, what people is those top athletes who probably gonna go play in the NBA anyway. You've been in college for a semester and you want to get paid for your likeness. If the NCAA uses your likeness in video games and that type of stuff. But
right.
For like, I use an example like Georgetown. John Thompson made sure all in the college made sure all those guys got jobs, like Ralph Dalton, Michael Jackson, Horace Broadnax. Some of those guys worked on Wall Street. Some of those guys went to law school, so on and so forth. So I think because of that connection to the college, I think you probably, even though you didn't get paid as a player, I think the payoff as somehow the college takes care of these guys, and having that at Georgetown on your resume, I think it puts your leg up in the marketplace. If you want to be a coach, high school coach, or college coach, I think it gives your leg up. But we'll see how it happens. But I don't think again, pre-tax. I'm guessing if you get $5,000 a semester, I'm not sure.
Right.
If that is that really enough to argue over? And let's say once you get out of school, if the college cuts you loose, like, okay, you got your $40,000. You know what I mean?
Yeah. We'll really have to wait and see. But I think that, like just like the fact that there are more players in the NBA, in the NFL, in the MLB that are making league minimums than there are these, insane 50, 90 million a year contract. Like Messi just wrapped up his 4-year, $700 million contract. Yeah, it's the largest contract in history. Yeah, you know that?
No, I didn't know that. But a lot of people watch soccer. I know that.
That's right. It's the most popular sport.
Right.
Like it's not even close.
Right.
But when you look at what Barca has accomplished since that contract has actually been a net in terms of like championships, La Ligas, across been a net negative in terms of out. They were there, but again, the large majority of footballers are making club minimums. They're not, there's only one Ronaldo. There's only one, even Ronaldinho, although he's retired at this point. But in other words, the superstars are the few and far between. It's it's so fun because you can, when you look hard enough, you can see a wealth gap in almost any sector. It's not just between not just a racialized wealth gap. I quite often amongst billionaires simply because it's a little bit counterintuitive. Like, what do you mean amongst billionaires? Right? It almost sounds. But when you look at black billionaires, when you look at all six of them, and you take the same socioeconomic stratification that of abject poverty, lower middle class, to upper middle class, and then to high net worth. If you take that same essentially rubric and you apply it to billionaires, all six black billionaires would be in the abject poverty category.
Relative, I got you.
Right,
but as far as the NBA,
their counterparts, and we'll see. We see the same in sports, which was bringing it up, is that the guys, and frankly, a league minimum even an NBA league minimum still puts you in the top 3% of income earners in the country. So, let's be clear that the league minimum still puts you in a nice position, even if for, the 4 years. Right. You may have over $500,000. I believe like league minimum is 600K. League minimum on NFL is I think 200K or 150K. My numbers could be a little bit off. But the point is that you're still above the average working class person. You're certainly you're making a living wage and then some.
Right.
So, but I think we're going to see that same stratification exists on the college sport level. That the those and athletes, if there will be a such thing as a minimum, they're probably going to rate whatever that minimum is. It's going to be interesting to see how the game franchises handle this. They put everybody in the game, every player, every position. As these games have become more and more realistic over the last 2 decades, the likenesses have become so much more intricate that it becomes hard to deny that you have mimicked. Like, let's say you even remove the names, in other words, and say, well, I'm just going to use generic numbers. You don't own the jersey number on the jersey, the school does. So we're just going to use the number. Well, unless you take the technology back to super tech, where we're going back to 8-digit or 8, where it's like pixelized images. The likenesses and the images down to the where like if a player grimaces in a certain way, if they do a certain move after a touchdown, like unique characteristics that any player can argument in court or petition for intellectual misuse of intellectual property without permission, because that image, characteristic, and likeness is so close to them, it's going to be challenging. So it's going to be interesting to see if the game developers create some type of minimum, one, to mitigate from rising costs, because able to keep their costs predictable when it comes to how they approach this. You didn't have to pay the players, but if all of them, and the other thing that's going to be interesting to see is if they come together to unionize. If the college players come together to unionize, to enforce some type of minimum, some minimum standards when dice using images, likenesses, etc. So that's what I'm really kind of waiting to see how that's going to play out.
This seems like a Pandora's box, really. I mean, if you play on the if you part of the synchronized swimming team, when you play volleyball, you don't generate revenue. Do you not get paid? But anyway, so anyway, one last parting shot. We got like 3 minutes. One last parting shot about BlackRock.
Oh man, I guess it's BlackRock. I mean, can I get a? I don't even want to. I don't even want a job. Just give me the money. I'm gonna just cut to the chase. But we've seen the relationship between private industry within the financial sector and the government only get closer and closer, and as Jada Pickett describes it as an entanglement. We've seen private industry and the government, they're going through an entanglement right now, where the lines are it's extremely hard to differentiate decisions that are made within a private institution that are largely driven by shareholders and a small minority interest, and decisions that are being made in the court of elected officials that are supposed to be representing the majority of people's interests, irrespective of their socioeconomic class. And clearly, that is a conflict. And I think that I don't really see that improving. Like, I don't. We'll go back to some type of delineation where,
Right.
There's a separation between church and state, frankly. Right. In other words, I only see that getting more entangled.
Right. So the Obama administration said that the Obama and Ben Bernanke had to work hand in glove, given the seriousness of the financial crisis. They never put that memo out when they stopped working hand in glove. So I think the Fed is the market. I think the Fed is drunk on power, and they don't want to give it up. They've never been this important before. They've always been important, but the Fed is the market, and people keep waiting to see what the Fed.
Popular before,
right? And people waiting to see what the Fed's going to do before happens to the market. It's gotten silly, but it's become like the norm. But anyway, there are a lot of masters of the universe, a lot of people running around like they're so smart and they're so this, but they basically believe in gifted money from the government. And you have everybody else working their behind off, and you have certain people who've been gifted money, and they're not subject to the vagaries of the economy. When things that normal people complain about, they don't live in that world. So what prices?
Yep.
So what? But anyway, so that's Trump and the GE. That's BlackRock, Larry Fink passing stock tips to with Jerome Powell. So another good session. I want to thank Mr. Mitchell, obviously, for his insights. But that's Trump and the GE. Really thank you guys for participating. Hope you get something out of it. Thanks a lot. So we're back in a couple of weeks. I'm not sure what we're discussing in a couple of weeks, but we may do a deeper dive into Indo in case you guys didn't get the point this time. But anyway, it's Trump and the GE.